Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, James Anderson, and this is going to be a mailbag episode. Got back from First Pitch Arizona on Sunday and fully updated the RotoWire Dynasty rankings yesterday. Actually, no, those were fully updated Monday. So definitely check out the Dynasty rankings if you haven't already. Top 500. There wasn't a ton of dramatic movement throughout, but there was some real notable risers and fallers that you might want to check out. A great time to get a subscription to RotoWire for the 2025 baseball season. But without further ado, let's get to some of your questions. First, from my NFBC partner, Todd Whitestone. Todd, I guess, had been doing some digging on some Washington Nationals. He said, if I told you the following Washington Nationals hitters at ADP would all turn out to be bargains, would you think I was wrong? And if so, by how much? So the Nationals hitters that Todd listed here, James Wood, who's got an ADP of 45.2 right now in 10 15-team leagues that have been completed on FBC, so 10 drafts worth of a sample there. James Wood basically going at the 3-4 turn in 15-team leagues. And then Luis Garcia going at 138.5 so far. Dylan Cruz going at 159 overall on average. And then Jose Tena going 420.5 on average in these NFBC leagues. I'll actually kind of work in reverse order there. So I'm definitely sold on Jose Tena being a bargain outside of the top 400. That's an easy one for me. I've got him on at least a few teams so far. He's only eligible at third base right now, but he could add second base eligibility through getting some starts against lefties when they give Luis Garcia the day off. Tena, I think he's going to capitalize, like a lot of these players, on just the way the Nationals play. They led the majors in stolen base attempts last year. Tena stole 6 bases in 44 games. That wasn't like a massive part of his game as a prospect, or at least something I expected to remain a big part of his game in the big leagues, but it's just the way the Nationals play. The guys steal bases. And I think Tena will be the everyday third baseman early in the season at least. So he'll get some runway, I think, with that job, just based on how he played last year. He hits the ball pretty hard too. For a guy that's got, I think, pretty clear 2020 upside, who's eligible at third base to be going outside the top 400, I think it's a great value on Tena right now. I used to think Brady House would be Washington's clear third baseman of the future, but his approach last year was pretty dismal. So I'm not ruling out Brady House taking that job at some point, but I just don't think it's going to be very soon. I think he would need a couple more months at AAA before they might explore that. And I think there's a chance Tena is just playing too well to miss out on playing time at that point. So love Tena at 420.5 as an ADP. Dylan Cruz, 159 ADP. I've adjusted my thoughts on Cruz so far this offseason from when I initially released my too early top 300 rankings, just to account for the stolen base ceiling that's there. He had 12 steals in 38 games with the big club last year, did Cruz, but he had just a 288 OBP. Conversely, he had 10 steals in 49 games with a 340 OBP at AAA. So Cruz is just going to run more in the big leagues than he ever did in the minors, just based on the way the Nationals are playing. And he is going to be pretty successful at that, I think. He's going to hit high in the lineup pretty regularly. So even though I'm not bullish on Cruz as a power hitter or as a pure hitter as a rookie, I think the other stuff kind of all works in his favor. So I'm going to project kind of like a 240 to 250 average with Cruz and around 15, 16, 17 homers, something like that. So just that in itself wouldn't be that appealing at pick 159. But if you throw on like 35 steals, good counting stats that are going to come with just how much he's going to play, where he's going to hit in the lineup, all those other factors outside of just how I evaluate the bat all work really well in Cruz's favor. So I think you talked me into him being a value there at 159, just for the stolen base quantity and the really locked in playing time there with Dylan Cruz. And then Luis Garcia, I haven't pulled the trigger on Garcia in any of my 6 NFBC drafts thus far. I've done 2 draft champions, 2 50s, 2 gladiators, just because I think the lesser versions of that middle infield archetype, guys like Luis Rengifo, Bryson Stott, Andres Jimenez, Michael Garcia, they're all going 3 rounds later than Garcia. And it's easier from a roster construction standpoint to get my catchers or my closers in that range where Garcia is going, and then grab a Rengifo or a Stott a few rounds later. Now, I do think Garcia should be going ahead of those guys. The difference with him is that, unlike all those guys except maybe Rengifo, I think you can project Garcia to actually help your batting average. Stott, Jimenez, probably going to hit around 250, whereas Garcia could hit 280, 285, probably would project him around 275. So that batting average help is valuable. And then you definitely have to rely on the Nationals continuing their running ways for Garcia to continue to be a 20-plus stolen base guy, but I don't see any reason why they would reverse course there. So, yeah, I think Garcia is a value where he's going. Roster construction-wise, it hasn't been something I've done yet, but I buy that. And then so you've sold me, Todd, on Tena, Cruz, and Garcia all being values, just from a projected earned dollar standpoint. Now with James Wood going at the 3-4 turn, he could certainly provide a positive value there, but I also look at some other outfielder ADPs, Wyatt Langford at 77.9. So that's two and a half rounds later than James Wood. And then Lawrence Butler at 113.6. So that's, 4 rounds later, 4.5 rounds later. Butler versus Wood, I think is close to a toss up for me. Wyatt Langford, I think I would take Wood over Langford, but it's, maybe a round difference, not 2.5 rounds difference. So, I would take Wood over O'Neal Cruz, who's at 380 or 38.7. So O'Neal Cruz going mid third round, Wood going at the end of the third round. I would take Wood over O'Neal Cruz pretty easily there, even with Cruz being eligible at shortstop. So it's not that I think Wood is getting overdrafted. I just think there's a bunch of screaming values at outfield a little later on. And where Wood goes, I'm also looking at, maybe my first closer or my first starting pitcher there. So I think it's roster construction issues are the reason why I haven't ended up with Garcia or Wood yet. Wouldn't rule out them being values, but if you need steals, Cruz is a great option at outfield. And then Jose Tena, I think, is just a fantastic value outside the top 400. Okay, so long question there from Todd to start things off, but wanted to kind of go one by one with those 4 Nationals hitters. Eddie Almaguer, great dynasty player. I've been playing with him for a long time. Eddie says, I'm very fascinated by Ronald Acuna dynasty ranks in general for next year. What are you expecting out of him in 2025 to merit this ranking? And then a follow-up, how does your answer contrast with Steamer's 30 homer, 51 steal, 292, 380, 410 slash line projection? Could this be a minor buy low window with Ronald Acuna? So Eddie's referencing me ranking Acuna 14th overall on the dynasty rankings, Paul Skeens at 13, Fernando Tatis at 15, Julio Rodriguez at 12, just for reference. So Eddie basically says, what do I see in him to rank him 14th? And then he throws out the Steamer projection. I'm not sure what to expect from Acuna in 2025 and beyond. So I guess you could say this ranking stems from just a lack of confidence by me in what we'll see from Acuna. I don't have like a slash line or a statistical line in my head with Acuna that's leading me to rank him there. I basically just don't know what we're going to get. I think Acuna will want to run a lot. I think that's just part of who he is as a baseball player. That's how he sees himself. But I don't know how much the team is going to try to pressure him to dial back the stolen base attempts, just given the fact that he's now torn both ACLs. I don't know how tearing both ACLs is going to affect his athleticism going forward, or just how healthy his knees will be going forward, or if he'll start suffering other lower body injuries affected just by the kinetic chain of adjusting for other injuries that lead to other injuries. We've also had, Alex Anthopoulos had the cryptic comments in early October about when Acuna might be ready this season. And then he did say yesterday, Tuesday, October 5th or November 5th, that Acuna won't be ready for the start of the season. So we have all this stuff going on with Acuna. I'm just not confident in what the player is going to be this year, what the player is going to be in 2026. I think if he doesn't suffer any major injuries over the next few years, buying Acuna this offseason will end up looking brilliant. But how confident are you that he won't suffer any major injuries over the next few years, or that he will just kind of be the exact same player in terms of frequency of stolen base attempts while staying healthy? There's just a lot of stuff I'm not sure about with Acuna. So I'm not sure where the right place to have Acuna ranked is for Dynasty. I think just a fully healthy Acuna playing 150 games, he's obviously better than the 14th best Dynasty player, but I just don't know what we're going to get from him. So sorry, Eddie, if you wanted more of a decisive Acuna take from me, but that ranking basically stemmed from my uncertainty in terms of what we're going to get from him. L.A. Williams says, what would DL Hall have to show you to be considered top 500 for Dynasty? So DL Hall did not make the top 500, obviously based on LA's question there. I just don't think Hall's a starter or a closer. So he's 26. He's never thrown 100 innings in a season as a pro. His stuff has gotten worse as he's dealt with seemingly some sort of injury or injuries every season. Even when he's healthy and his stuff is as good as it's been, in recent years, Hall's command is still usually a problem. So, and he's left-handed. So if we just assume he goes to the bullpen, it's less likely that he will get ninth inning opportunities regularly. So I think that Corbin Burns package, it's really all kind of hinging to me around Joey Ortiz, who looks like a great, piece for the Brewers, if not a extremely high impact one. But I think DL Hall, I'm just kind of assuming he, maybe they keep trying it as a starter or like guy that follows an opener, but I'm just kind of assuming Hall will eventually settle in as like a setup man. Camposit says Zyhir Hope of the Dodgers at 148 ahead of Matt Shaw of the Cubs at 150 caught my eye, considering the last prospect rankings had Hope well behind Shaw. Are you thinking of Hope as a top 15 prospect now, or did Shaw slide down a bit? Yes, so this is one of the big developments from this update to the Dynasty rankings. Zyhir Hope jumping into the top 15 among prospects. Nothing has changed with Shaw. So I think you noticing him moving ahead of Shaw, that just kind of tells you where Zyhir Hope moved, not anything about Matt Shaw. And so I think if you listen to the podcast I did with Jeff Ponce from a couple weeks ago, that was sort of me talking through Zyhir Hope and kind of figuring out like where I was at with him on certain issues. And really the big one that kind of crystallized for me was that I was struggling with projecting Zyhir Hope's body. On video, he just looks too thick and too just kind of muscular almost to be someone that I would expect to steal significant bases into his mid-20s. But as Jeff and I talked about on that podcast, it's just kind of more of a testament to how special of an athlete Zyhir Hope is. Not a body that we're used to really seeing on the baseball diamond that often, but you look at just all of the quality of contact metrics, hit tool, power. It's all kind of like a corner infield, like a premium corner infield prospect, but he also just happens to be fast and projects to be a value add defensive outfielder. So it's a pretty special package. And so, yeah, this was me saying don't trade Zyhir Hope this offseason unless you're getting a ton of stuff back. Prospect Vibe Check says, it seems as though there's a cluster of prospects or guys who lost eligibility from 263 to 290 with only a select handful of specs cracking the top 200. Is that based on strategic preference or coincidence? So I think, what you're referencing is the tiers that I'm seeing in the prospect rankings. And I mean, there's no better way to sort of show you guys where the tiers are than on the dynasty rankings, because you can see the gaps between prospects. So I went and for the article version of this podcast, which will be up at RotoWire Thursday morning, November 7th, I have a big chart in here with the top 21 prospects on the dynasty rankings with their corresponding dynasty rank. So you can kind of see it's like Sebastian Walcott, Roman Anthony, Jason Dominguez in the 50s, Leo DeVries, Walker Jenkins in the 70s, Christian Campbell, the sixth and final prospect to crack the top 100 in the 80s. And then you got sort of Max Clark, Jackson Jobe, Dylan Cruz, Kobe Mayo, Bubba Chandler, Zyhir Hope, Bryce Eldridge, Matt Shaw, Andrew Painter, Jesus Mate, Kumar Rocker. Just kind of a big run of prospects in the 100s there. Dalton Rushing, Noah Schultz, the 19th prospect and the final prospect ranked in the top 200. Then you got Luke Keishel and Colt Emerson in the high 200s, and that's 21 prospects right there. Colt Emerson at 218 is the 21st ranked prospect. And then the big cluster that Prospect Vibe Check is referencing, I think you're basically seeing the start of this big tier of prospects that I see from the 22nd prospect, Samuel Basayo, to the 53rd prospect, Kyle Teal, and that ranges 263 to 340 on the dynasty rank. So you've got about 30 prospects in a 75 spot window on those dynasty rankings. So I think you're kind of seeing where I see those tiers. And I've mentioned this elsewhere, but this is the first time I've ever produced a set of dynasty rankings where, and in about 11 years, I've been doing these dynasty rankings with a couple years mixed in there where I wasn't doing the rankings, but I've never had a prospect or my number one overall prospect ranked outside the top 50 before, and that's where we're at right now. So I think it's definitely an extremely weak moment for the top of prospect rankings. But I think part of that is just because Sebastian Walcott, Leo DeVries, Walker Jenkins, Max Clark, Zyhir Hope, Jesus Mate, Bryce Eldridge even, these are guys that I don't expect to be up anytime soon. And they're guys whose prospect value is going to keep going up. So even though like Sebastian Walcott's my number one ranked prospect, like I think his dynasty value is still going to trend up from here. And you can see the same potential with your DeVries and Walker Jenkins types. So we have guys that have the potential to be really good prospects, but they're not there yet. So we're either projecting them or we've got like kind of finished products in Roman Anthony and Jason Dominguez. But to me, Roman Anthony feels kind of like, instead of a number 2 prospect, he feels more like a number 5 overall prospect in like a normal year to me. Similar with Jason Dominguez there. So it's a weak crop of prospects, and it kind of is weak throughout. So even though it's weak at the top, it's weak in the middle too. So it's it's really a tough year. I think if you're trying to rebuild in Dynasty, like on the one hand, it's easier than ever to trade for the best prospects in the game, but building around those premium prospects seems less viable than ever. It's always been kind of a threading a needle type of thing to pull that off. But right now it feels like it would be even more difficult than that to just build only through prospects right now. So yeah, I think it's something we hope will get better. I mean, there's been a lot of theories about why the minors is kind of depleted right now. I think one that I hadn't thought a ton about that someone mentioned to me when I was at First Pitch Arizona was just the rate of burnout from American prospects in the game, specifically. Like you hear more and more, just friends of mine who have kids who play organized baseball. Like these kids are just burning out at like 15, 16, 17 in the US because they're forced to play baseball at such a young age all the time. So you're getting fewer just premium baseball prospects from the US than maybe ever, just because of the specialization of the game. It's led to guys just kind of dropping the game before they even get into pro ball in some cases. So, but there's a ton of other factors besides just that. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at there. SPP says you've got Junior Caminero and Jackson Holliday back to back, and I believe that's no change from the previous set of rankings. So it seems their value is holding for you. Can you talk about different scenarios where you take one over the other and vice versa, depending on team build? Okay, so Junior Caminero, pretty easy player for me to value in Dynasty. And Holliday is a pretty hard player, I think, to value in Dynasty. They happen to be back-to-back, but like I see Caminero essentially following the same sort of path as like a Rafael Devers or Austin Riley. Maybe he's a little bit better than those guys. Maybe he's a tiny bit worse than those guys, but just that general kind of, 4-category third baseman, never a first rounder, but always kind of like a second or third rounder during his peak years because of how good the average is, how much power he's going to hit for. So Caminero, I think, is an easy guy to value in like a dynasty startup. He's just a young corner infielder you can plug in your lineup for the next 10 years. Holliday, it's a much clearer 5-category ceiling, and then a much less clear sort of floor risk profile. It was a tough year for Holliday because on the one hand, I think he had too good of an eye to really get challenged at the minor league level, but he also wasn't ready for the big leagues as a 20-year-old. So he ended up having to split the year between the two levels as Baltimore prioritized his long-term development over the games they could have been playing with the service time if they'd chosen to keep him at AAA for most of the year. I think they realized that for him to get better, it would help for him to kind of go through those growing pains against big league pitching. So, all of that to say, I'm not quite sure what Holliday's going to turn into, but that was his age 20 season. He's heading into his age 21 season. He's someone who is about as projectable as, any 6'2" position player you're going to see his age. So I think he could show up to spring training and just tear the cover off the ball all spring, and like his ADP could climb into the top 100 by opening day. Like that's in play for Jackson Holliday, but he could also go through more growing pains and see his dynasty value slip this year. Like if he kind of has another up and down year against big league pitching, his dynasty value will steadily dip there. So this is an important, it's kind of a swing season, I think, for him as a dynasty asset. He could really ascend into just that elite territory, just given his age and the 5-category potential. But he's going to have to take a step forward this year. And really what I was trying to do with the ranking is like Holliday is an extremely obvious buy low target to me in Dynasty. So I didn't want anyone to sell too low on him this offseason. But if I were on the clock in a startup dynasty, I'd go Caminero over Holliday in most cases. And that's why I'm ahead. Just to avoid the uncertainty with Holliday, and because I think second base is the deepest position there is, basically. So, I think we could look at Holliday as a clearly better dynasty asset than Caminero in about 7 or 8 months. But I think Caminero is just so safe that I would go Caminero over Holliday, and that's why I haven't ranked it. All right, Dynasty Junkie says, I don't think I've ever felt this way before, but the hitter pool seems watered down. For example, I want to love the early hitters. They should be building blocks, but I don't feel very safe with James Wood, Junior Caminero, Jackson Holliday, Jarren Duran, Michael Harris, Lawrence Butler, Jazz Chisholm, etc. All hitting prospects that I've ranked in the 20 to 50 range, I think. And then he says, I'm not saying these hitters can't be stars, but there seems to be a high risk factor in drafting these guys this early. So Dynasty Junkie, I largely agree with this sentiment. It does feel kind of, these aren't guys that we're just like, yes, like I know exactly what I'm getting in this player. And they're valued so highly. So that is kind of a challenge. I think in a dynasty startup, I'd be most likely to end up with Michael Harris in a batting average league or Lawrence Butler in any format of the guys you listed, just based on how I think they'd be valued in the market. Maybe the answer is that this offseason, it's best in dynasty startups to go even closer to drafting like it's a redraft team than we normally would. Because if you use like a 3rd round pick in a dynasty startup on, Jackson Holliday, right? Like that makes it tougher to compete this year unless he just really maximizes everything. But I do still think, for the most part, this is still the way to build. I don't really have any concerns about Lawrence Butler, to be honest. Same thing with Junior Caminero. I think that might have been Jarren Duran's peak season, but I also there's a case that it wasn't. Obviously, I think Michael Harris is a great buy low right now. I think he's definitely closer to the really good version of him than that we've seen. James Wood, depending on the price tag, could be a buy low or could be a sell high, but I don't see James Wood busting. I think like James Wood failing to meet expectations with him being kind of like a 255 hitter, 260 hitter or something like that, but he would still hit for a ton of power. He would still steal bases in that scenario. So I definitely agree with the sentiment. And I also kind of agree with where I have him ranked though. It's there's risk with these guys. With like Jazz Chisholm, it's just all about durability. Like I'm not concerned about I think you just kind of get what you're going to get with Jazz, but you don't know how many games you're going to get. I agree with the sentiment, but I don't really think I would adjust the dynasty rankings too much. I think you just kind of got to grab one of those guys there and hope for the best. But maybe not. You don't want to load up on all young guys. I wouldn't say in a dynasty startup. Gordy Myers, was Tink Hence of the Cardinals an intentional omission? I've seen no info on his season-ending injury. Did you hear it's something major? It was intentional to leave off Tink Hence, but also he barely missed. That I kind of jam my favorite 90 to 100 prospects in there, and I left him off on purpose, although he could have easily slotted into that range. I just think Tink Hence is just such an obvious Tommy John surgery candidate. I don't expect him to establish himself in the big leagues, honestly, before needing some sort of arm surgery. That's not a fun type of analysis to use with, dynasty rankings and prospect rankings, just kind of predicting a pitcher to get injured, but that's kind of how we have to do it. And it's honestly, it's a process that's worked pretty well. I think in the past, if you look at undersized young pitching prospects who throw really hard at a young age and have, a list of minor to major arm injuries that start popping up, it almost always leads to more bad stuff in the future. And the Cardinals babied Tink Hence all season. He averaged just under 4 innings per start And he wore down in the second half of 2023. This year they were able to keep the performance level high, but they couldn't get him up over 100 innings. They couldn't get him up over 4 innings per start, and they couldn't keep him healthy. He dealt with, there was like a cramps injury, and then I think something about a shoulder got reported, and then there was an undisclosed injury at the end of the year. It's scary to me. I would be pleasantly surprised if I had Tink Hence in Dynasty if he got to the big leagues this year. But I honestly think like Tommy John surgery before he gets to the big leagues is even more likely than him actually getting to the big leagues this year. Phil Kramer says, if Austin Riley was the same age as Bryce Harper or Jose Ramirez, is there a case to be made that he would be ranked outside the top 75 overall? So Harper and Ramirez are each 32. Austin Riley is 27. And if Austin Riley were 5 years older, he'd probably be ranked outside the top 75. But those 5 years are 5 years I expect to be prime years for Austin Riley. So that's basically the whole point of having him is those 5 years. So that's why he's ranked in the top 30. All right. Sox Rocks. With it seeming increasingly likely that Roki Sasaki may be posted this year, what range would he slot in at? So the closest thing I saw to these rumors was ESPN's Kylie McDaniel saying in his trade value rankings, or no, his free agent rankings, that indications point to Sasaki joining this year's free agent class. And then he goes into ranking him. So it's indications point to is what McDaniel says. I'm not sure if he's just like, he might be just connecting breadcrumbs here. He might have been, there might be people with other non-Dodgers teams that are saying like, oh, we can't get a hold of his camp. We think he's like going to sign with the Dodgers. Like, I don't know what is leading McDaniel to say indications point to. He mentions that the Dodgers have $2.5 million in international bonus money left that they can use in this period. The deadline to do that would be December 15th, and everyone thinks Sasaki's going to sign with the Dodgers. So that might be all McDaniel's referencing when he says indications point to. But just, let's act like, yeah, he's gonna be posted this year. It's a really complicated issue because if Sasaki was coming off a classic Roki Sasaki year where he was regularly touching 102, 103, just, one of the absolute best pitchers in the world, then I think it's easier. But he's actually coming off a down year, both from a velocity standpoint and a performance standpoint. He was kind of upper 90s this year, which is obviously still great, but a little concerning that a player that young who used to be regularly touching triple digits now doesn't do that anymore. And his walks were up this year compared to past years. So it's extremely risky. Everything I said about Tink Hence basically applies to Sasaki, except Sasaki threw even harder than Tink Hence, although Sasaki's not as slight of a build as Tink Hence. But just, if you're listing things that are risk factors for arm injuries, Sasaki checks pretty much all the boxes other than a clearly reported arm injury on his ledger. But with him pitching in Japan, I just don't know how often anything like that actually does get reported. But I say all that. Sasaki is still easily the best player for first-year player drafts if he's posted. My current guy that I would de facto have at the top is Travis Bazzana, and I've got him ranked 265 overall on the Dynasty rankings. So it's a really bad class, obviously, but Sasaki would be, I don't know, like 150 spots higher than Bazzana, 125 spots higher than Bazzana. I think I would probably have him around 125 overall in between Jackson Jobe and Bubba Chandler. But yeah, I think until we actually get firm reporting on, the actual news and destination, I'd be treading pretty carefully here. But yeah, I think the name value has probably outstripped the actual value at this point with Sasaki, but he's still just far and away the best first-year player draft guy if he gets posted. Daniel Hoffman, this is a really good question because it's applicable for you guys who are using these, and something I'd like to address anyways. But if you were to redo your too early top 300 today, who would be the biggest risers and biggest fallers now that you have battle tested your rankings? So yeah, I released the too early top 300 early October. So it's been about a month exactly since I released those. So biggest risers based on just kind of battle testing these, Lawrence Butler of the A's, Spencer Schwellenbach of Atlanta, Alec Burleson, Dylan Cruz, Spencer Arrighetti, Austin Wells, Drew Rasmussen, Porter Hodge, some guys that I would have ranked a bit higher. Obviously, I ranked the relievers separately, but Porter Hodge, I think I was too dismissive of him as I still don't think I'm going to end up with Porter Hodge because I think they could sign someone over the top of him, but I'm more convinced now that he would definitely be the guy if they didn't sign someone over the top of him. And then, Rasmussen, who knows durability wise, how many innings we get from him this year. But I think the spec is worth more than where I had it. And then like Arrighetti, I didn't properly, I knew how good Butler and Schwellenbach and Arrighetti were down the stretch, but I just didn't properly have it kind of calibrated in the rankings. Already touched on Cruz earlier. Alec Burleson is someone I had a bunch in redraft this past year, and I think I just sort of underestimated just kind of how good of a package of production it is at outfield post pick 200 there. He's a guy that is going to help your batting average, I think. Only concern with Burleson might be that he sits against lefties, but I underrated him. Schwellenbach, I think, is kind of a high-end SP2 at this point. I ranked him more as sort of a low-end SP2, high-end SP3. So those are the risers. Biggest fallers, and I did sort of non-injury related fallers because there have been guys like Gavin Stone who sadly are not draftable now. But JT Realmuto is someone I ranked higher. I think I ranked him around pick 100, but I would never take him there actually. Just the lack of speed, the fact that we could still see more age-related decline. Not interested in Realmuto at pick 100. Mason Wynn, I knew I was going to really like Mason Wynn, but I just misjudged sort of the middle infield market when I ranked him just outside the top 100. It's just the draft doesn't play out in any way where you would take Mason Wynn where I had him ranked, even if I would have been taking him a lot. It's just you don't have to really think about him until post pick 150 or so. Maybe post pick 140, but still too high on Wynn in that initial set of rankings. And then some outfielders, Jake McCarthy, Wilyer Abreu, Matt Wallner. I don't mind any of those guys, but I just, it's tough to kind of on that super early top 300 figure out exactly where all the tiers are, especially at a position as deep as outfield. But Jake McCarthy, Wilyer Abreu, Matt Wallner, a few guys that I ranked a few rounds higher than I would actually take them now. Dean Kramer, Tony Gonsolin, a couple Casey Mize, a few pitchers that cracked the top 300, but I don't think you shouldn't be taking Casey Mize anywhere around the top 300. Dean Kramer, I think, you could take him early 300s. You don't need to take him top 300. Gonsolin, I still think he's a decent value, but just overranked him. And then Johnny DeLuca with the Rays, Ernie Clement with the Blue Jays. Clement, I think I just sort of assumed incorrectly that he might play more than he will. And just after looking at him more when I'm on the clock, I love the shortstop third base eligibility, but there's not really any reason to value him as a top 300 guy. And then Johnny DeLuca, I think there's actually a path for him to be a massive value this year and play more than people think as a righty hitter with the Rays, just given how good his defense is. But Definitely can't draft him as a top 300 guy given the uncertain playing time there. He was playing regularly down the stretch and actually performing quite well. I know his DeLucas surface stats last year are pretty poor, but once he was sort of playing regularly down the stretch, he was kind of on a 15 homer, 30 steal pace or so. But there are false positives sometimes with guys down the stretch, and it doesn't mean that he's going to play regularly next year. So jump the gun a little with DeLuca as a top 300 guy. Prospect Vibe Check says, in comparing dynasty values versus prospect ranks, it seems like Jesus Mate of the Brewers is the 11th ranked dynasty value among prospects. Is that more representative of your current valuation? Yes. So just to correct, so I have him 16th among prospects for the record there. So I think you maybe missed a couple guys, but yeah, that is a reflection of my current valuation of Jesus Mate. Another guy, I'm sure Prospect Vibe Check saw this podcast, but the one with Jeff Ponce, a couple of really good conversations there about Mate and Zyhir Hope, and kind of more along the lines of just coming to grips with the state of the minor league player pool and deciding that Mate's superstar ceiling needs to be prioritized over some of these guys that don't have that type of ceiling and also still come with some risk. So definitely top 20 for Mate at this point. Let's see. And then Dynasty Maven says we got our every mailbag pod needs who are a few prospects outside your top 100 who have the best chance of being top 10 a year from now. So Dynasty Maven has that question for us. Given how bad the minors are right now, this essentially needs to be the perfect storm of me being too low on a player currently and them just getting close to like 100th percentile outcome this year. I have to have screwed up with where I'm currently ranking them for this to even be a possibility, because it's just not a deep enough amount of prospects for someone to realistically come from outside the top 100 to be top 10. And then they just have to play out of their minds. So here's some hitters that we can rule out pitchers. We can rule out old players, close to the majors players. So here are some hitters that I will say have a very unlikely, but a possible chance of finishing next year in the top 10. Eric Batanti with the Brewers. He's kind of like a Mark Vientos prototype. Emil Morales with the Dodgers, second best guy from the DSL behind Jesus Mate. Ty Pete with the Mariners. I can't quit Ty Pete. Brandon Winokur with the Twins. Just, crazy physical tools. Probably won't hit enough. Luis Morejo with the Guardians. Maybe he could get to the top 10 as like a 4-category monster at first base. Sammy Stafura, I think, is a great buy this offseason with the Reds. I don't think he's ever going to be like top 10, but he could be. He could be a 5-category guy, I think. Really like the how his hit tool and swing decisions have gotten better since getting into pro ball. Braylor Guerrero with the Rays. He's someone that I would have listed for this a year ago, and then he just keeps missing a ton of time with injuries, but the talent's there. And then Kellen Lindsay with the Dodgers, Braylon Payne with the Brewers, the top 2 candidates, I think, for this from the first-year player draft class. Both Lindsay and Payne have sort of that slap-ish hitter tag with them, probably more Payne than Lindsay, but both of those guys are just premium athletes, big-time stolen base upside. So if the hit tool is good and they're showing signs of hitting for more power than expected, Lindsay or Payne have the upside to finish next year's top 10 prospects. But I would bet on none of them finishing the year as top 10 prospects. So, okay, going to wrap it up here soon. Thought I'd just run over my trip to the Arizona Fall League before closing things. So it was a great trip to Arizona. Got to see a bunch of people, both people that just friends in the industry or just people that subscribe to RotoWire or listen to podcasts. So if you came and said hi to me in Arizona, really appreciate that. It was great meeting everybody. I got to see a double Jack Caglione homer game. That was fun. Leo DeVries hit his first homer in that game as well. Was sitting next to Chris Welsh, who, of course, got a perfect video of all those homers. If you want to check out his Twitter account at @isitthewelsh to see those. Tommy Troy, Diamondbacks prospect, hit an impressive homer at a game I was at. He's looking strong and healthy, and he actually finished 2024 like the player he was supposed to be after not performing like that player at all for the first few months, and I think probably playing through injury. So Tommy Troy, I think, is a good buy this offseason. It wasn't that long ago that Tommy Troy and Matt Shaw were considered by me and by a lot of people to be very similar prospects. So I like the idea of buying low on Tommy Troy. Also saw a ton of bad pitching, a ton of bad defense, and just a lot of reminders that you should not really put much stock into Arizona Fall League stats. I did a fun panel with Chris Clegg and Eric Cross where we kind of gave some dynasty buy and sell targets. I suggested buying Mason Wynn there, particularly in batting average leagues. I also, Heston Kierstead, I had as a buy. I would have had Andy Pages at the Dodgers as a buy if we'd had time to get to him. I think both Pages and Kierstead are going to have pretty big years, and they're very affordable right now. Willie Adames I had as a sell. Just think coming off a career year, we got the free agent tax, but I don't think it's a strong enough tax. And then just really outlier performances with the stolen bases, which you can attribute to the way the Brewers were running last year, and we don't know where he's going to end up, and he's definitely not going to run that much again. He's also, probably going to be tough for him to beat the batting average and OBP marks from last year. And he's starting to decline as an athlete at 29 now. So I think Adames is a good sell. I also did Rob DiPietro's Pull Hitter podcast along with Toby Batflip Crazy. That one got posted this morning, so check that out on Rob's Pull Hitter feed. One thing that really stuck out to me from that one is just I kind of realized mid-pod that I hadn't been aggressive enough about grabbing Lawrence Butler in early drafts, and so I regretted that, and interested to sort of see where Lawrence Butler's ADP goes from here. And then the final thing that I was a part of at First Pitch Arizona was the rookie draft, which was a ton of fun. 8 of us drafted rookies for a 9-hitter, 5-pitcher lineup, and or maybe it's 10. Maybe it's 10. Or no, yeah, it is 9 and 5. I got Jason Dominguez with the 3rd pick, Kobe Mayo in the 2nd round, Heston Kierstead in the 3rd round, Edgar Caro in the 4th round. Chris Clegg took the 1st catcher in Dalton Rushing. I took the 2nd catcher in Edgar Caro. I think Rushing and Caro both break camp in the majors this year, so I like getting Caro there. Seth Halverson of the Rockies. I don't even know if I've talked about him much on the pod, but a subscriber correctly brought him up to me after I was pumping up Jaden Hill towards the end of the season as a Rockies relief pitching prospect I liked. And Halverson's an even better Rockies relief pitching prospect. He might be the Rockies closer this year. He's got really good stuff. I think he was the 4th reliever taken behind Porter Hodge and Ben Joyce in this rookie draft, and Abner Uribe also went ahead of Halverson. I took Nick York. I wished I could have gotten Nick York and Will Wagner. I love both those second base prospects as just really cheap options there who could help your batting average. Nick York also could maybe steal some bases. And then Joey Cantillo, Michael McGreevy, my first 2 starting pitchers in that rookie draft. Talked about McGreevy recently on the pod, but Joey Cantillo, I think, is just a great source of innings there. Jonathan Rodriguez with the Guardians, Zach DeCenzo with the Astros, Drew Romo with the Rockies. I'm starting Drew Romo at my util spot with Edgar Caro at my catcher spot in this rookie league, and that goes back to just how deep the rookie catcher pool is. I think catcher is actually the deepest position this year among rookies, which is just a crazy thing to say, and speaks a lot to just how little depth there is at the other positions. But I drafted Drew Romo to be my util player in this league. Will Warren and Yilbert Diaz round out my pitching staff. Just looking for strikeouts and maybe a breakout from one of those guys. And my final pick, Brooks Baldwin. Just had to get someone to throw in the shortstop spot there, but Brooks Baldwin, Chenzo, Jonathan Rodriguez, basically just looking for home runs at that point in this rookie draft. Okay, that's going to do it for the podcast, and I really appreciate everyone listening. We'll be back with a guest next week.